Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Working with Enterprise, a guide for the early stage entrepreneur. Today's session will be presented by Noga Tal, the Global Head of Partnership at Microsoft Startups. As you may know, the reactors are a local hub for technical learning where developers and startup professionals can connect and build new skills on Azure and open source technologies. And our space is currently closed due to COVID, so we focus more on online events such as today's session. Please feel free to check out our meetup group to find out more on our upcoming events. Before we start, I wanted to let you know that the session will be recorded and the recording will be available to you within a few days on the Reactor YouTube channel. I will also share the link with you soon. I will post it in the chat box. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat box as well, and Noga will take the time at the end of the session to answer those questions. The last thing I wanted to share is that we collect feedback on our events, and that's actually a great opportunity for you to share your feedback with us. I'm going to share a link to our survey and appreciate if you can dedicate a minute or two to complete the survey and share your feedback with us. I think that's all from my end. I'm going to pass it on to Noga now to kick off today's session and enjoy. Noga, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Moria. Welcome, everyone. Really excited to have all of you join us today. So as Moria mentioned, my name is Noga Tal. I lead partnerships for Microsoft for Startups. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, Microsoft for Startups is all about connecting startups all over the world to the different types of resources that Microsoft has to offer to help you grow your business. You know, from our cloud solution all the way through a full range of different type of technical credits and support from Office 365 and Dynamics. And even more so, we focus on helping you to connect to customers, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. So if you haven't connected with us, please do so. I also want to give a shout out to our friends over at Epicenter. Their cohort is joining us today. So welcome. Hope you all find this session useful. So what are we going to be talking about today? We are going to spend some time talking about the value of working with enterprise companies, what's in it for them, what's in it for you, and some tips and tricks from our experience at Microsoft and working with thousands and thousands of startups every year to try to help you to understand how to best navigate this world. I will say this session, we did call it a guide for the early stage entrepreneur. So this session is very much focused on the earlier stages of the journey when you are just starting out and you're looking to close your POC or maybe, to sell for the first time to an enterprise customer. We do have sessions, whether through the Reactor and other Microsoft channels that focus on later stage sales. So folks that are already in the, have already raised VC rounds or in the Series A, B, and are looking to expand their sales channels. We have other sessions for that. So with that, I'm going to kick it off. I'm just going to remind you what Moria also just said. This session is for you. It's all about supporting you and giving you information that will hopefully be useful for you. So please do ask questions in the chat box. I will take as much time as we need at the end to answer any and all of your questions. And I'll also leave my contact details at the end. So if you want to contact me, you're welcome to do that as well. So let's talk about a bit about enterprise customers, enterprise companies, and startups and how they view each other. So we know that, when startups are looking at corporates, you might be looking at a company like Microsoft and saying, okay, great partner, very powerful company, but also probably very slow, very bureaucratic, can give me a lot of, can be a source of income and revenue for my company, but also is probably a little inefficient and non-innovative. And by the way, this is based on research called Matchmaker, which was done a couple of years back. But when corporates look at startups, there's a real opportunity there because they're saying, startups are fast, are innovative, are agile, are risk takers, are disruptors, opportunity, passion. So, corporates look at startups to really solve a lot of the areas where they have gaps. The good news is, while these two worlds were living, I wouldn't say separately, but there was a bigger gap between the two worlds. What we have been seeing over the last 5-6 years is far more collaboration and far more openness from corporations and large enterprise companies to start to work with startups in a variety of different ways. So I love this. I love this article from Fortune where they said 2016 is the year that startups and corporates became BFFs, which of course it was a slightly slower progression, but it was a tipping point in 2016, which we get to still enjoy today. And I'll talk a bit about that in a second. So what's in it for an enterprise company? And I want to take a minute to talk about this because this really helps you to understand what your value add is as a startup when you're approaching a larger company. What is it that they see in you that you should probably consider as part of your pitch, and you should probably hone in on as something that you are delivering to them. So one of the things that, for large companies is hard to come by is growth. It is really hard to find new growth opportunities. Growth is typically achieved by selling new products, by finding a new demographic, a new audience for your product, or by growing to a new geography. Aside from that, there aren't a lot of great opportunities for enterprise customers to reach growth. What you as entrepreneurs can do is actually help a corporate identify new markets, is bring a new product that helps them to tap into growth opportunities. The other piece is, of course, embracing disruptive technology. You are the ones that are seeing the gaps and are able to move very quickly. You come in with a lot of agility and ability to execute much quicker than a corporate can ever do. Of course, shorter time to market of new ideas. You are able to move much quicker in terms of taking that idea and implementing it. And then corporates also look to you to learn from you. They want to learn about emerging trends that are happening around the world. They want to learn about how to cultivate an internal culture of innovation that helps their employees, how to foster better collaboration. And of course, they also look at you to access a new emerging pool of talent. They look at you as talent that they can tap into for new ideas, for new sets of expertise. And what I found really interesting from the research that's been coming out over the last 2 years is, if before corporates were preferred to actually work with more mature startups, so the startups that had an established solution in the market, the new normal is that 67% of enterprise companies actually prefer to work with early stage companies. So that's the good news. I'll also say just a quick word about COVID, because I assume that's top of mind for all of us. What I have been seeing is that with COVID, there is still, COVID has actually made these needs far more critical for enterprise companies. So especially kind of the top 4 when we talk about growth opportunities, disruptive technology, and the ability to execute quickly. For us as well as Microsoft, as well as a lot of the partners I work with in the industry, one of the things that has become even more apparent and even more critical during COVID is our ability to serve our customer base. And that means that we need to move quickly, and we need to deliver new services that typically take much longer to develop. And that's where startups come in. So I would say that COVID has, even though I know it's a very difficult time for everyone, and it is a very difficult time to be, raising money or selling, I do want to highlight the positive aspect of it, which is your services and your ability to deliver services to corporates to allow them to serve their customers better is actually much more critical at this point in time. So keep that in mind as you're starting to pitch. Just a bit more flavor. Why do corporates typically come to interact with you? They want to look at new technology, they want to look at new business models, they want to gain insights. They also want to look at potential acquisition targets, even if it's not for today, maybe for tomorrow. They want to have their eyes on you and keep up to speed on what you're doing in the next few years. And then everything we just talked about, entrepreneurial talent, faster routes to market, and of course, improving corporate social responsibility. If any of you are in the social impact space, that is also a very big area of focus for enterprise companies. So that would be something I would highlight. Before we get started, I do want to talk a bit about the fact that working with enterprise companies holds, very real rewards and is a critical path for you on your way to growing your company and, of course, in being able to raise funds. But it can also be very costly and time consuming, which is some of the things that we will talk about today are meant to help you to mitigate those risks and to really think about how you are approaching working with enterprise companies so that you are, not losing focus and not losing too much time. So things just to consider before we get into the tactics. Enterprise customers have very specific requirements. It is much harder, especially when you're going for a POC or, first sale. It is very hard to give them an off-the-shelf solution. You're going to have to work with them on their requirements, make sure that they're happy. They also have a higher bar for product quality, user training, and support. So it's much harder there to try something out that hasn't been, well tested internally. Integrating with enterprise infrastructures is far more complex because it involves a lot more, regulations, API limitations, legal privacy. You have to go through a lot more hoops on to even be able to start to sell to them. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There are ways to work through it and to make it as smooth as possible. And then the last thing just to consider is that your product is, of course, not a standalone. The enterprise customer has an entire ecosystem of software that they're already using. Some of it is going to be first party, some of it is going to be third party. So there will likely be a level of complexity when you are looking to integrate your product into their company and allow them to test it out and to enjoy the benefits that you're offering. So with that, before you start to even map out who you are going to be reaching out to, I wanted to talk a bit about how you go about mapping your goals, because each one of these goals may require you to go about it in a slightly different way. And it may require you to reach out to slightly different people, or to even completely different companies. So one of the things I like to talk about is really, why is it that you're looking to connect with an enterprise company? And it may seem very obvious to you, but each one of these different options is actually quite a different path in working with an enterprise. So one option is, a POC. Maybe it's a new feature validation. Maybe it's validating your pricing model, product market fit, A/B testing. That is kind of the classic route. The other route is the forest funding. Maybe you're working with them because you're looking for a corporate venture capital and you're looking to raise dollars. Could also be sales channels. So maybe you already have your product ready to go. It's already in market and you're looking to expand your sales channel. Strategic partnership, meaning you might work with them as a partner in order to achieve some type of agreed upon goal that would create a win-win for both sides. It is not necessarily directly related to sales. And then, of course, the last one is a marketing channel. So it's really good to take a minute before you decide who you're going to reach out to, what size they are, who within the company you're going to talk to, and really figure out for yourself what is the intended outcome of this initial interaction that you'd like to see. Also think about what your expectations are for the customer. A lot of times we have expectations that that go unsaid, and it creates a bit of a mismatch. So it's really good to understand, how fast are you expecting them to move? What results are you looking to get from the engagement, so that you can get really clear with yourself once you start these conversations, whether you feel like this customer or this enterprise company is going to suit your needs. And then the last thing, this is just a kind of negotiation 101. Before you even start a conversation, be really clear with yourself, with your leadership team. What is it that you're willing to offer? What are you looking to get in return? And where are you willing to make some concessions, right? Sometimes you may decide that you're willing to offer your product up for free for a while because you are looking for that big brand name who will test your product and will attest to it and will give you, a glowing review. That's fine. There are no right answers here, but it is good to know in advance what it is that you're willing to put on the table and in return for what, so that you can really go into the negotiation or the conversation, but every conversation has an element of negotiation in it, so that you can go into these conversations with a clear understanding of, you know, how far you're willing to go in order to get what in return. So with that, now we move into mapping and prioritizing. There are a lot of customers out there, potential customers, lots of enterprise companies, and this can be very time consuming. You really want to get as specific as possible about who you are going to target, so that you can really prioritize your time. You know, your time at this point in the development of your company, your own time working on your company is probably your most expensive resource, so you want to be sure that you're spending it wisely. So just a couple of tips here. One thing is to reverse engineer your GA, or general availability. Really think about which markets you are planning to be available in at the end of the day. Which type of customers do you have a distinct differentiator with? And then reverse engineer back to where you would naturally start, where would be your center of gravity in order to reach that end goal. Also think about future investments. So if you know that you are nearing your, you know, in about 6 months time, you would like to be in a position where you are raising your A round. Who are those investors? What will they care about most? Will they care about revenue that you've been able to secure? Will they care about simply having some type of an agreement signed, but with a very well-known brand name? Probably they will care about both, but it's good to know who you're going to be prioritizing, who you're talking with, who you've already started talking with, and what they'd like to see from you in order to be able to move forward. The last thing is, the third thing is actually ease of access. So what geographies and markets are you currently able to support, given your physical location, time zone, and expertise across your team? Now, we know that during COVID, physical location is far less of a critical factor, but you still want to think about, you know, what do you and your team have to offer, and what's going to be the easiest path forward. If you're sitting in, you know, if you're sitting in East Coast US, you know, and you end up targeting a customer that sits on the very opposite time zone, do you have a team that is able to do that? Do you have, you know, development team, a support team that will work, you know, at 3 in the morning to make this happen? And if not, maybe there are easier targets that are closer to you. But of course, beyond time zones, there's expertise, there's ability to actually support the customer. So think about all of those elements. Networks. Really think about who you can reach through an existing connection. So cold calls, cold emails, I'm still a strong believer in them. They do work sometimes, but your highest chances of success are strong connections and relationships. So look to see who do you have 2 degrees of separation from, and what is the strength of these relationships. Do you have someone who can introduce you, who has a strong relationship with that company, with the right person within that company? Another thing to think about as you're doing this mapping exercise of who you want to reach out to is actually to look at your competition. Your competitors can actually be your best teachers. So look for a startup that has a similar solution to yours, but has been in a market slightly longer than you. And I know no one has the exact solution as you do, but look for someone who is in a similar space to yours, who may be targeting similar customers, similar investors. Look for someone who is 6 months, 2 years even farther along than you are, and look back at how they built their success. Look to see what they did early on, what geography did they focus on, what vertical, who did they sell to, which companies did they have the most success with, which investors did they have the most success with. See if you can glean some tips and some insights that will help you to decide where you prioritize your time. And then of course your own past. Depending on how long your company's been around, if you've just started, congratulations. You may learn from, you know, previous company that you worked at, or a previous startup that you built. But even if you've only been around for 3 months, 6 months, really think about what type of customers and specifically which role owners have been most receptive to your pitch. even if it did not end with a sale, even if it did not end with some type of a partnership agreement, who was even receptive to just having a call with you? That will give you another, another data point to help you understand where you should focus your energy and your time. What roles and departments are you going to engage with? There are a lot of different departments within, within corporates that you may end up engaging with, and each one could potentially be a good partner for you. So my tip is to never focus on just one department or one role owner. Large companies are exactly that. They are very large. Different departments don't necessarily, share information about every single interaction that they have with other departments, because it's virtually impossible. So, don't be shy about reaching out to different role owners within the same company and seeing where your solution might land the best. So, you've got your CIO office, you've got the CTO, the investment arm, you've got the marketing team, the CMO's office, and the entire marketing departments that are all over the company. Sometimes marketing team actually has the most purchase power for your specific solution. Business development, of course, corporate development, M&A teams, if you are slightly more mature and are ready for that stage, investment arms, if you're thinking about a CVC. Business unit owners, right? You can go straight to a business unit itself and see if they would be interested in working together with you. IT, R&D, startup scouts, and then all of the supporting teams, whether it's finance, procurement, legal, operations. These are all departments where you may interact with quite a few just to get one BOC or one sale in the door. But then some of these are also overlap. Some of these teams may all be looking to purchase from you. So I would reach out to all of the ones that you feel could be relevant to your product. I'm going to jump through a few of these next slides because I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for a discussion and for questions. So geography, I do want to touch on this very quickly, even though COVID has changed everything, obviously, for everyone, and we don't really know what the world will look like post-COVID. I do want to talk for a second about geography. So consider where it will be easiest for you to make your product available. Consider where will it be easiest for you to cover travel costs. I know some countries and some regions are still traveling, like Europe. Well, we hear from our partners and from the investors that we work with that some of them have gotten used to doing business virtually. It's not everyone has made that complete transition. So in some cases, you will still have to travel in order to provide customer support, in order to build that initial trust with a new customer that you're looking to sell to. So really think about what that might mean for you, both during COVID and hopefully at some point post-COVID. The other thing to think about is when you're looking at large companies, really differentiate between collaborating with a local office and collaborating with headquarters. What I see a lot of startups doing is hitting high, which is great, but they go straight to the headquarters. It is much, much, much harder to sell into a corporate headquarter than it is to a small subsidiary. In terms of the return on the investment of your time, a small local subsidiary will likely give you the same benefits as HQ. You can still say that you sold to Microsoft, even if you sold to a small office in your country. You don't actually have to go and sell to Microsoft corporate HQ in Redmond and roll the product out to the entire company, to all customers. It's fine if you just run a small pilot in a relatively smaller location with a small group of people. You're still going through the motions of working with a large corporation. You're still learning everything you need to learn about the product and how it fits in. And that's when you also are able to grow, right? If you start with a small office, they see that you did a great job. You're then able to replicate that with other offices. And I'll give you an example. It's much easier for me, one person in an organization called Microsoft for Startups to potentially purchase a product from a startup than it would be if you went to, Microsoft in Redmond and tried to sell it to everyone. So really think about that. At the end of the day, you can still put Microsoft as a logo on your presentation to your investors. So think about what you can actually bite off that would make sense for you. So let's talk a bit about initial outreach. I get a whole lot of pitches from startups, as does our entire team, and I just wanted to give you a few pieces of to consider from the things that I see and the rest of our team sees when we get these pitches. You really want to make sure that you are providing enough information for the other person to fully understand what it is that you do, but with minimal time and effort. Always assume that the other person is receiving hundreds and hundreds of these types of emails a month, because that's what we do. We work with startups, so we're seeing hundreds of these emails. If it takes too much time and effort to start to go back and forth to get all the information, to jump on a call just to understand the very basics of what it is that you do, that might actually be a barrier to move forward. So you want to make sure that you're covering in a very succinct way, what is your solution all about, with specificity, right? What is the potential value that you're bringing to my company, and why do you think it's a good fit? And then what type of collaboration are you looking for? And the last one is really important, because I'll get a lot of wonderful folks reaching out, asking to work with us. But if I don't understand what it is that they would actually like to do with us, it's really hard for me to help them. If I know they're looking to sell into Microsoft, they're looking to sell with Microsoft, or whatever the answer might be, that means that within 5 seconds I know exactly where to send them to, who to introduce them to, what type of advice to give them, rather than a longer process, which might end up kind of losing focus very quickly. Once you have secured your meeting, hopefully, you've done this quite a few times, you've reached out to a few, however many folks you've reached out to, there is maybe 10% that will reply to you, and it's fine. That's how the business works. So you will reach a few that do reply. Maybe it's through personal connections. And you finally have your first meeting set up. So before you jump on the first phone call, really, really important to do your homework and understand a few core questions that will help you craft your message and will really help you understand how to approach the meeting. So one thing is to think about the broader company, not just the division and the person you're talking to, but what is the company's mission? What are they trying to do, and where are they going? How does your solution help them to get to where they have stated publicly that they would like to go? What are their business objectives? Now, you may not find all of this information in full online, but you'll get some insights that will help you get that direction. The other thing you'll want to look at is, who have they been purchasing from in the past? If we're talking about closing a POC or selling to them, what kind of deals have they been making? What type of solutions have they been looking for? What do they consider successful? How might they be using your solutions? And also look at startups. What kind of startups have they invested in the past? Who have they partnered with recently? These will all give you clues as to what type of engagement might they be most receptive to with you. The other things to consider before the meeting is to also don't be shy. Don't be shy about asking questions. It's completely legitimate to ask, who's going to be attending the meeting? Because sometimes you'll jump on a call and there will be 10 people there, not just the one that you expected. So this also allows you to do some homework. Who is this person? What are they measured on? What's at stake for them in terms of their the reason that they're engaging with you? Because each team and each team member has a different scope of role, and each one might have a very different objective in taking this meeting with you. What does a successful collaboration with a startup look like for them? And by the way, these are all questions you can also ask during the meeting itself, but it is good to come into the meeting with some sense of what to look for, because this will also allow you to really customize your message. Hopefully by this point you have your pitch down. But you really want to be able to customize it in the meeting and highlight your value proposition per the different stakeholders that you expect are going to be in the meeting. And then you also want to understand where they fit in the company. Are we talking about C-level executives that are going to want to talk about overall business goals, where they're going to want you to keep the discussion very high level, and then they will introduce you to folks that will talk more about the operational side? Or are these mid-level decision makers where you are going to want to craft your message to really focus on solving a very specific business problem that they have within their organization? So also just be really aware of the altitude and make sure your message is adapted to that. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip through a few slides because some of these go into very specific tactics on how to manage the meetings, what kind of information to look for, and how to handle them after the meeting. You all will have access to this presentation if you found it to be helpful. Morial will send us these just slides that talk about, some useful questions to ask during the meeting, and so on. So I'm going to jump to this slide. So some of the common dilemmas and pitfalls after you've taken a meeting. Hopefully the meeting was successful and you're starting to move ahead. Some of the things for you to think about, as we talked about, your time and your resources are very, very precious at this point in time. So are you willing to customize your product to the extent that the customer is asking for? This is a major dilemma that I see a lot of startups having to deal with. So you really want to do some thinking with your team and understand if that is something that you're willing to do. Some potential customers will ask for a level of customization that will require you to work quite a bit to get there. And sometimes it's actually better to leave a deal on the table rather than spin up 6-12 months just trying to customize your product. The other thing to think about, which I'm sure is already keeping you up at night, but does your current burn rate allow you to continue the process given the expected timeline? So, with enterprise companies, the timelines can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months, all the way up to even a year to 2 years. So ensure you get as much information as you can when you have this new potential customer and understand what the process is going to look like, what the expected timeline might look like, how much effort you are going to have to, time and effort you're going to have to put in. Maybe it's with, some requirements that they have in order to buy from you and so on. And really think if you have the current, if you are able to go through that entire process. And then the last thing to think about is really how you can simplify your offering. Sometimes you will find that on the other side, the enterprise customer is actually willing to go with something that is far simpler and lightweight, just to test out whether your product is a good fit for them. So really think about, can you simplify your solution just for the initial pilot with this customer? Can you give them something that's simpler, that's much lighter weight for deployment, that would expedite launch, would get you there within 6 months rather than 2 years? Then if that works, you can add more services on top of that. You can expand it and go bigger with them. The idea is to just get to a point where you can move as quickly as possible and as smoothly as possible. Some other things to think about, staggered approach. So this is very similar to what I was talking about, is can you work with this customer and really think about breaking down your collaboration into simplified steps that will allow you to, to really learn along the way, but not necessarily have to wait the full 2 years until you've actually moved forward. The other thing to ask yourself and the customer is, what level of support and what is your SLA? So for a small startup, support is probably something that you're just starting to explore. And maybe it's one person doing this part-time, and that's all okay. You just want to make sure that you are setting expectations correctly with this enterprise customer. What are they expecting from you? Are they expecting you to do training for end users? Are they expecting you for an SLA that is something that you're just not ready to provide? Maybe you can meet halfway down the line, that's okay. And then the last question is, are you staffed appropriately to move ahead? So when all the resource in all the resources that you are looking at, from funding to time to people, do you have everything you need to actually move ahead and make this a success, rather than finding yourself, putting all of your effort into this one potential sell and then losing focus of other things that your company needs from you right now. One important thing is to really know how to take a no or not now. Chances are that a certain percentage of the time, even after you've been through 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings, even more, you've gone through an entire process, you've been ready to to make this happen, and at some point you will hear a no. And that's very normal, and it happens to all of us. And things can fall apart at any step along the way. Right before you deploy, the solution, things can still fall apart, even if you did every single thing right. And I think it's really important to prepare for that moment and to understand how to handle it. And some of the things I've found to be useful, both from my end and from the startup's end, is try to collect honest and open feedback. Really leverage the trust that you've built so far with this, with the people you've been working with, and try to understand from them, what happened. And it might not be something that you did. It might, chances are it has to do more with an internal process that they're going through. But really try to understand what happened and see if there's something you can learn for other engagements that you have with customers. Another thing to remember is, even if things don't work out as you'd hoped, and it doesn't matter if it didn't work out in the first meeting or didn't work out farther down the line, some of these people might actually be your biggest advocates. Some of these people might be so excited about your product and what you do that they are very happy and willing to help you to succeed. Some of the things you can think about, if you find that you had a good connection with someone and that they were impressed with your product, even if you were not able to move forward, consider asking them for referrals. They probably know quite a few people within their company who may be open and receptive to your product. They probably have a very large network of people who are in similar roles to themselves, but in other companies that they can refer you to. Some of them may actually make good members of any type of a board or a mentor circle that you are building. It could also be some type of an informal advisory board that you're building out. So these would be people that you might ask them to continue to be involved in how you're building your startup, and you never know where that leads to down the line. Keep these folks appraised of what's happening. Even if things didn't work out, keep them updated every few months. Send them a little newsletter, send them a little personal note, helping them to, keep up to speed on what you're doing. I know I appreciate that very much from the startups that I've met with, and it helps me to see how the startup is growing, what's happening with them, and I can always. It also helps me to understand when is the right time for me to reconnect with them, and when is the right time for me to maybe introduce them to other people. What else? I'm just looking at time. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. Last words of advice. I'm going to jump through this one because I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for a discussion. So expect long cycles. We talked about this. It can take anywhere from 3 to 18 months between initial contact and closing, even just a POC or a pilot. So just be ready for that and come in with a lot of patience and an understanding of what resources you have to put behind this. The other thing is always prepare ahead of time. So start reaching out before your product is ready, because these long cycles happen. And I say this also about investors, right? You want to think 12 months ahead, think 6 months ahead. Who is it that you want to be selling to in 6 months? Who is it that you want to be raising funds from in 6 to 12 months? Start the conversations now, because they do take longer. The good news is, because of COVID, people are far more available and willing to get on calls, and people have a lot more time on their hands right now. So it is a good thing, but these processes still take time. We talked about this earlier, but sell to multiple stakeholders within the same company. Don't worry about it. Just reach out to a few different divisions within the company. If it's a no from one of them, ask them which other division might be a good fit for them. And then, of course, remember, you're working with people, not the company. And I get this a lot. A lot of folks look at Microsoft as this big, powerful corporation, and they forget sometimes that it is, at the end of the day, one person, or a group of people that they're talking to. So it is really about building relationships, making it, don't leave anyone behind. Remember that these are people at the end of the day. While I do represent Microsoft, I am one person. So it's better to build that personal relationship. Last but not least, thank you for joining. We are now going to take as much time as we need to answer questions and have a discussion. So Moria, I'm going to stop presenting so that you can lead us through any questions that we might have.
Yes, thank you so much, Noga. Thank you for this insightful session and all the tips. I'm sure that attendees will find this very useful. And yes, as you mentioned, it will be a good time to turn to some questions that I posted some in the Q&A box, if you can see, and I see some questions still coming in, so I'm going to post them there as well.
Thank you. So I see one question. Sorry, 1 second here. It even takes Microsoft people a second to figure Teams out sometimes. Okay, so how to take the first step from idea to POC. If the solution is 100% technology driven, how does Microsoft provide the initial support for POC? That's a great question. So a couple of things. Microsoft, so today's session is not necessarily Microsoft focused at all. This was more a general tips and tricks on how to work with any type of enterprise company. In terms of Microsoft initial support for POC, we are actually working on that. At the moment, we typically support startups that have already gotten to a POC or already starting to sell. But the good news is we actually have a dedicated team working on that and trying to understand how we can provide support to startups that are exactly at your stage, that are earlier on, that are looking to build their POC. So that is coming. It's going to come in the next few months. In the meantime, our focus is primarily on startups that have already found product market fit. So if you have that product market fit, you've been able to sell to 1 or 2 customers, and now you're ready to expand, that's where our sweet spot is. What local Microsoft UK teams welcome pitches from founders? So Microsoft UK, we have a few folks there that are part of the Microsoft for Startups team. So I would recommend reaching out to them first and foremost. And then I would say the UK is probably just like any other subsidiary. So depending on your product, you would look for a specific team that is most aligned to the type of solution and product that you are that you're looking for. And I'm seeing that you're asking for founders with great ideas but need help in getting started. So it really depends. So this person is asking who in Microsoft would be able to help them with finding a co-founder with technical expertise and with funding. So each one of those pieces, some of those pieces you will find through the reactors. So you'll find more and more sessions that will provide you with, for example, technical information for startup founders. Co-founders. So finding a co-founder, there are a few organizations actually in the UK, but also worldwide, that help with founder matchmaking. So they would, if you are a non-technical founder, they would help you find a technical founder and vice versa. Funding. Early stage funding is typically done by angel investors and then VCs that focus on seed funding. Microsoft provides support that is less of direct funding in the early stages and more of in-kind, that products and services that would help you slow down your burn rate. So free cloud credits and other tools that you might need to build your product. So hopefully I answered that. I am seeing also a question about the fact that my presentation, the real focus here was on B2B based solutions. How is this process different if the solution is B2C? We cannot launch without a working solution. So that's a great question. B2C would typically not be focused on an enterprise company. So an enterprise company would likely, you would work with them on a B2B to C, right? So if you are B2C and you're looking for an enterprise collaboration or as a channel, so for example, let's say your solution is B2C and it is primarily focused on employees, for example, and you're looking at the enterprise company as a channel to get to those employees. It would work in a very similar way to everything that I just described. You would still have to go through all of the legal requirements and everything that that the corporate would ask from you. The only difference is that you would probably be working with a slightly different set of stakeholders. And then you're saying we cannot launch without a working solution. So yes and no. I mean, it's true. You can't launch without a solution that works, but you can start the discussions even if you only have some type of a demo, even if it's not a live demo. If you can sell them on the vision, a lot of times they will understand that within a few months you will be ready to go live. You can at least start that conversation. I hope I answered your question, that I understood it. If not, please feel free to drop another question in the chat, and I'll try to answer it. I think that's it. I'm not seeing any more questions. Moria, is there anything else?
Yes,
okay.
I think that's it for the question. Let me just have another check, but
oh, there's a good one. I've never heard of this group before. How do I get in touch about our startup? That is a great question. I love it. So Microsoft for Startups, you can reach out. So we have a website, and then you can also reach out to startups@microsoft.com. We have a fantastic team that is there just to answer these types of questions, get to know your startup, and help you understand how to navigate Microsoft and the different opportunities you might have. And then, of course, the different channels that Moria was referring to. The Reactor is a great organization, a great team at Microsoft that is all about supporting developers all over the world. And with COVID, it's made all of these sessions far more accessible because instead of being in person, they are all online. There is a massive library of different types of events and sessions that the Reactor team has already held with information and about pretty much anything you can imagine, and you can always reach out to the team and ask for new sessions if there's a specific topic you'd like to see us cover. Moria, you can of course correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we are usually, at least on my side of the business, we love getting your requests because it helps us to know how to best serve you.
Definitely. Yes, I think that's it. I don't see any other questions coming in, and we are also on time now, so I think we can maybe close the session, if that's okay with you, Noga.
Yes, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate your time and I appreciate your questions. Feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Noga Tal at Microsoft for Startups. You'll find me there. Feel free to continue the conversation over there if there's anything I didn't address today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.